I'm Tiffany Cloud. Welcome to The Storm, and thank you for watching today on WYLN 35. This November, the residents of Wilkes-Barre will be electing a new mayor. I'm pleased to share with my viewers that I have spoken with both candidates for this seat about coming on The Storm, Democrat Tony George and Republican Frank SORICK. Today, it's Frank SORICK's turn. He will be joining me on The Storm right after the break. Welcome back to The Storm. I am so pleased to be joined today by Frank SORICK, who is a Republican candidate for Wilkes-Barre mayor. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And welcome to The Storm studio. I appreciate you coming all the way to Hazleton. I really do.
Not a problem at all.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you. So I really want to just start, as I often do when I have candidates on the show, with allowing the audience to get to know you a bit. Okay. So Frank, if you could tell the audience a bit about yourself in terms of how long you've been living in Wilkes-Barre, what you've done for a living, that sort of thing.
Prior to becoming a real estate agent, I was a banker. Worked for Fleet National Bank on Montage Mountain. Grew up in the small town of Falls, Pennsylvania in Wyoming County. And born in Kingston at Nesbitt Memorial.
Okay.
I'm going a little bit back and forth here.
That's okay.
A little nervous, sorry.
That's okay.
But at any rate, I grew up in Falls, got a job at Fleet National, saved up enough money to purchase a house, and my wife and I were very excited to be homeowners, and we could afford a home in either Scranton or Wilkes-Barre. So we decided to move to Wilkes-Barre, thinking it was a smaller, safer city, and we didn't realize we were going to be in for quite such a rude awakening.
Well, and we're going to talk a lot about that rude awakening throughout the show. So tell me, how long have you then lived in the city of Wilkes-Barre?
Since 2001. We purchased our first home in the city on Sullivan Street in Wilkes-Barre, and we still own that home. Unfortunately, it has become a rental simply because the neighborhood had deteriorated to the point where we couldn't sell the home, so we had to still keep it, but we didn't want to.
That's such a
raise
shame.
Our children. It is. It's a 7-bedroom Victorian, stained glass windows, and my children couldn't play outside in that neighborhood. It was terrible. It still is terrible.
That's such a shame. Now, is that what inspired you to decide to run for mayor, or was it that and a combination of some other things?
It was a combination of many things. The rising crime, the deterioration of our neighborhoods, the out-of-control spending, the lack of accountability with City Hall. I mean, you pick anything at City Hall. I don't care what it is. If you said, well, I'm just going to investigate the purchase of paper clips at City Hall, I guarantee you the receipt's not what you think it should be. And that just seems to be, the way it is in Wilkes-Barre. And most people who I've spoken with who are lifelong residents of the city, they're as disgusted as I am. And they tell me, Frank, it's always been that way. It's never going to change. Well, I'm here to make sure it does change.
Well, and I think a lot of people really appreciate you stepping up to run. Wilkes-Barre is typically a Democrat stronghold.
It is.
So you have an interesting challenge ahead running as a Republican.
I don't think so.
Okay, tell us why.
I think the old definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results, and that's what I'm telling people. Are you pleased with the direction of your city? Have the democratically controlled city of Wilkes-Barre, both council and mayor, for as long as anyone can remember, for 50 years. Has it gotten you where you want to be, or has it progressively gotten worse? And that's what I'm bringing, something different to the table, different ideas. And I'm looking to change Wilkes-Barre, not just change the mayor's office and say, okay, well, now we have a Republican in there who's a little more conservative or whatever. We need to change Wilkes-Barre as a whole and make sure that this type of leadership that we've currently seen under the Layton administration never happens again.
Tell me how you plan to change Wilkes-Barre.
I plan to, in my very first day in office, I plan to look for enacting a charter study commission, a group of folks who will look at the city's charter and the strong mayoral form of government that we have and say, do we want to allow a mayor who has all of the power to do what we have seen done? Is that the way we want to continue to do things? Do we want to allow any of his 5 friends to get elected to city council and then push every agenda he has ever had through? And you know, I have to give my current opponent, I have to give him some props here and say, you know, he has been the one who has said no to several of the mayor's initiatives, but he said yes to quite a few as well. And those are some of the things that I look to change. I don't want a council, even if I'm mayor, I don't want a council to just go along to get along because they're afraid of upsetting the mayor. Council's job is to be the legislative branch of government for the city of Wilkes-Barre. They should look to upset the mayor.
Right.
You know, don't just sit there and say, well, yes, everything Frank puts through is absolutely wonderful and we're going to go along with it, because they should be questioning everything that I put through.
Well, it's called checks and balances for a
Absolutely.
reason. When you balance, it's because one's this way and
Yes,
one's this way.
yes.
And so, yes, it should be balancing, not just agreeing, and then you both go one way.
In the city of Wilkes-Barre, we're all checks, no balances.
Okay, interesting, interesting. So you're running as a Republican. Are you concerned? I mean, you just said something nice about your opponent, but are you concerned at all that if he is elected and if Democrat policies in Wilkes-Barre continue, are you concerned that his election would be a continuation of Layton's reign, or are you suggesting that it'll be a little
I think
different?
he'll bring something completely different. In all fairness to Tony George, I don't think he's anything
Okay.
like Mayor Layton. However, that being said, is he going to do the things that are needed to be done to ensure that when he's finished being mayor, that the next mayor is not just another Layton?
Okay.
And that's what we need. You know, and as much as I sit here criticizing our current mayor, you know, he's probably not the worst guy in the world either. However, his policies have certainly taken Wilkes-Barre down a path that I don't think any rational resident of the city can look back and say we're better off today than we were 12 years ago. Because 12 years ago, people weren't afraid, you know, to sit on their front porches. Today, you drive down Wilkes-Barre, very few people are sitting out on their front porches because they're quite literally afraid of being shot right there.
It's sad. You talked about the fact that one of the first things you do if elected for office is actually, in a way, take your power away.
Exactly.
That's fascinating to me.
I'm not seeking this job to grab power or grab anything. I'm seeking this job to give the city back to the people, and that's where it needs to be. When we look to changing our city's charter, currently our 5-member council can, by ordinance, change our charter. That's it. In our original charter, our council meetings are supposed to be at 7 p.m. They've been moved to 6 p.m. to accommodate the dinner plans of one of our council members' wives. Unacceptable. I'm sorry, but if you can't be there at 7 o'clock, resign. Just get out of there, because you know the people are still working at 6 o'clock. If they're punching out at 6 p.m., how are they going to get to council meeting at 6? Which, if you want to speak, you have to be there 5 minutes early. So that in itself just doesn't work for the people of Wilkes-Barre. And when I looked at changing a city charter, I think the charter on a small scale is a lot like the United States Constitution. It's the rules set forth for the city of Wilkes-Barre, and it's what governs them. I don't think 5 people should just be allowed to change it. I think it should be moved to referendum so that any future changes to that charter should be made by the people.
Interesting. Well, and I know that's a really big part of your campaign, but there are a lot of very big parts to your campaign. And right after this break, we're going to talk about them.
Thank you.
We will be right back on The Storm. Welcome back to The Storm. I am joined today by Frank SORICK, Republican candidate for Wilkes-Barre mayor. You talk a lot in your campaign, as I pour over your Facebook page and your website, about the fact that you're fed up. You talk a lot about corruption. Tell us a bit more about, besides obviously you've spoken about the charter, et cetera, tell us what you mean about corruption and being fed up.
Well, what we've seen in Wilkes-Barre and surrounding communities is almost like a pay-to-play environment. When we're talking about awarding city contracts, we always see the same people being awarded the same exact contracts, or whether it's a contract to build the intermodal or it's a contract to demo a property, we always see the same type of contractors always getting the same work. And some contractors don't even have the opportunity to bid because they're not licensed in the city of Wilkes-Barre. And in my opinion, that's a pay-to-play environment. They're giving campaign contributions to the mayor or city council members, and then they're awarded these contracts. Now, under Pennsylvania law, that's not considered bribery. However, I think it is a form of bribery. If I'm giving you a $500 campaign contribution and I'm the only one allowed to bid on a project because you've set the requirements to tailor my specific business, well, then that seems a little corrupt if you ask me.
Sounds very Hillary Clinton-esque to me and the Clinton Foundation, but we won't go there. You have something that you bring up in your campaign called Operation Cleanup.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
That's what we used to refer to as our spring cleanup. You would go down to City Hall, you would purchase a permit that would hang on your property, and it would entitle you to remove up to a ton of whatever, whether that be old appliances, whether that be your old sectional, whatever it was, you could clean out your basement, you could get rid of it, and that permit would cost $50, $75, whatever it was, and people were happy to pay it, and they would put the stuff out in front of their house and it would be taken away, and that was the Operation Cleanup. Mm-hmm. Now, in our current administration, it was almost day one, his first term, he eliminated that. And since then, we've seen increased dumping throughout the city. What's happening is you're forcing people to get rid of that stuff somewhere. And if they can't afford to take it to the dump or call a hauler or whatever, perhaps they're dumping it in the back alleys. We don't know. But there's a lot more dumping in the city than there was 12 years ago, and that's for sure. So,
I cannot go without discussing crime, of course, and you certainly brought that up early in the show, that that's one of the biggest concern of the people in Wilkes-Barre. Talk to me about what you would uniquely do if elected.
Well, first things first, I mean, we need to have a chief of police who's serious about ending crime. And we currently have a new chief of police who is far better than our last one, that's for sure. But I don't know if it's he's not empowered to do what he needs to do, or he just isn't where we need him to be. But at any rate, we need a chief of police who is serious about ending crime in Wilkes-Barre, and not just say, okay, we have drug dealers and this and shootings, and those are the types of crimes we're going to target. We need to target all crimes, quality of life crimes, drugs. It doesn't matter. All crimes need to be dealt with.
Okay. One of the things that you discuss in your campaign is that you want to have a fully staffed city services.
Yes.
Which I can completely understand wanting.
Right.
One of the immediate questions that always comes logically, and you've been a banker, so you know, is how, Mr. SORICK, do you plan to pay for that?
Well, first things first, I mean, we're going to end corruption. We're going to free up a lot of that cash that was, given. When we talk about pay-to-play environments, where do we think those contractors are getting the cash to give the kickbacks? I mean, they're certainly not taking that out of their own profits or pocket. It's built into the contract. So when we end this pay-to-play environment, we're going to reduce costs overall. When we look at our City Hall, we look at how many assistants we have in City Hall. These are jobs that were created by our current administration, and their salaries are way too high, for one.
Okay.
So when we look at cutting some of those things, we can divert those funds back to our police department or our DPW or wherever they need to go. But that in itself won't solve our problems. We need to look further. And currently, a lot of people don't know that the Citizen's Voice in 2012 wrote an article, Wilkes-Barre's Hidden Secret, referring to our 300-acre municipal golf course. It's literally a parcel of land the size of the city of Ashley, and it's in Bear Creek Township, 9 miles outside the city of Wilkes-Barre. Now, I've questioned whether any other third-class city in the country owns a parcel the size of another city in another town. The answer is absolutely not. Wilkes-Barre is blazing trails here. They are the creator of this.
So just so we get this straight, so Wilkes-Barre owns Wilkes-Barre Muni Golf Course, which is a terrific, very challenging golf course. So the city owns Wilkes-Barre Golf Course. You're saying Wilkes-Barre Muni, though, is not actually in the city of Wilkes-Barre, even though it's owned by the city.
It's in Bear Creek Township, and in my opinion, if we want to keep that a golf course, we need to look to either the county of Luzerne or the Bear Creek Township. Someone else needs to own this property. The city of Wilkes-Barre should not own this property. It doesn't benefit the average city residents. You can't go there for a picnic lunch. It's not like Kirby Park or Cole Street or any of those places that are free admission to the city residents. City residents are forbidden. There are signs up there. Josh Moyer wrote this article back in 2012, and he took pictures of signs. He wasn't even allowed in there. You know, as a reporter for the newspaper, was told no.
So if this best kept secret of Wilkes-Barre were sold,
yes,
how much money could it potentially bring into the city of Wilkes-Barre?
When the newspaper valued the property, they valued it at close to $900,000 to $1 million. I think it's much higher than that. I think the newspaper was being a little conservative in their numbers. There's a lake up there also. Some of these homes could sell upwards of $500,000. So if we're looking at some of these parcels, I think we have more than $1 million in revenue to be made off the sale of the municipal golf course.
It's interesting because often I have candidates on the show and they have a lot of dreams as to what they'd like to do, but they don't necessarily offer a suggestion. And while this may be popular by some and not so popular by others, you are at least offering a suggestion outside of increasing taxes to bring in revenue to the city.
I'm a city resident also, and I look at taxation, and I think Wilkes-Barre City is the highest tax municipality in the county of Luzerne. We cannot look to the taxpayers of Wilkes-Barre and say, we're going to chase you further out of your home. That's unacceptable to me, and it's not something I'm ever going to do.
And it's certainly something you've been passionate about for a long time because you are the president of the Wilkes-Barre Taxpayers Association, correct?
Yes.
So you've been fighting for a very long time against increasing taxes.
Absolutely. And like I said, my administration will never increase taxes on homeowners. We just will not.
Before we take the next break in about a minute, what is one of your other priorities you'd like to address if elected mayor?
Well, we've discussed ending crime in the city, cleaning up the city streets, some of the other staffing the city departments. How about restoring accountability to City Hall? Currently, if you're asking questions, you have to seek right-to-knows. It's an endless process, and you're buried in paperwork, and most citizens get disgusted before they ever get the answers to their questions. I dream of a City Hall that answers questions to its citizens or is proactive and puts some of this information that citizens might seek to gain right on our city website so that they could just get it at 2 in the morning at the click of a mouse.
That'll be music to the ears, I'm sure, of a lot of voters. We've got to take a break there. We will be right back on The Storm. Welcome back to The Storm. One of the things that I've read a lot that you're doing is you're running a low-spend campaign.
Yes. Which,
again, kind of rare, especially for something as big as running for mayor of Wilkes-Barre. So tell the audience why you're doing that.
Well, certainly it just bothers me to go to people and ask them who are taxed to death already, in danger of losing their homes, and some of these people on a fixed income, and to look at them and say, can you give me $20 toward my campaign? That's not me. So right away, I don't want to ask people for money. I mean, obviously running a campaign costs money, and I'm well aware of that, and my campaign website will accept donations, as will I. However, as I've said to people, I don't want to ask people for money. I don't want to be beholden to anybody once elected except for the taxpayers of Wilkes-Barre, the residents of Wilkes-Barre. Those are the people I will work for. Those are the people I will represent. So unlike other candidates, I don't want to accept campaign contributions from anyone looking for a contract or a favor or a job with the city of Wilkes-Barre, because again, the people that I hire, the contracts that are awarded by the city of Wilkes-Barre should be in the best interest of the people, the residents, not the, who's going to get the kickbacks or whatever. That should not be what you're about.
Okay. Bad press aside, and we have a lot of bad press in Hazleton too, and Wilkes-Barre, obviously you have bad press, and it's very sad, but I want to give you the opportunity, having lived in Wilkes-Barre as you have, to also talk about the good side of it, because if elected mayor, you'd really have to be an ambassador for the city and try to convince businesses, et cetera, to move into the city proper. So Tell me what you love about the city of Wilkes-Barre.
There's a lot to love about the city of Wilkes-Barre. When you're in Wilkes-Barre, there really is a sense of community out there. When you talk to the people, the lifelong residents, I've made a lot of great friends since I've been in the city of Wilkes-Barre. And you know, it is that sense of community. And when I talk about it deteriorating, I'm also talking about residents who are still there, who have lived there their whole lives, who are saying, why should I stay? And I'm telling them, stay because we're going to improve, not move.
Okay. Where can people go to learn more about your campaign?
My website, SORICK.com. It's just my last name.com, and it's very easy, SORICK or SORICK.com.
Okay, and you also are on Facebook?
I am.
SORICK for Mayor.
SORICK for Mayor on Facebook, or you could look me up personally, friend me on Facebook, Frank SORICK.
Okay, and you have a lot of information, I know, just on Facebook alone about your campaign and about your platform. As we close out this show, I want to really give you the last 2 minutes or so to tell the audience and summarize exactly why the largely Democrat city of Wilkes-Barre should think about doing something they haven't done, as you've said.
In 50 years?
In 50 years, people.
Right.
I mean, it's really terrific that you're running. And
Yes.
why should they do something different for the first time in 50 years?
Again, to go back to the definition of insanity, if we want something different, we can't get there by doing the exact same thing we've always done. If the past 50 years have taught our lifelong residents of the city nothing, it's that we're not fixing the problem by doing the exact same thing. We have to do something different to get something different. And when I look at the current leadership that Wilkes-Barre has and where it's been and where it's going, I look at government's first job is protection of our citizens. And I don't believe this administration, the council or the mayor, I don't believe they know what that means. They just seem oblivious to that, and we need to change that. This government has failed the city of Wilkes-Barre, and I vow not to.
Okay, we have a little less than a minute left, and I know you don't like to say anything disparaging or negative about your opponent, but why are you better suited than your opponent to be the next mayor?
I'm not politically connected. I know no one at City Hall, or I'm not connected to anybody. None of my family members will or have ever worked for the city of Wilkes-Barre, so I'm not afraid to make the changes that need to be made. And at the end of the day, I don't care who is upset, as long as the city residents are better off tomorrow than they were today. That should be our focus.
Well, Mr. Frank SORICK, I thank you so much for doing your first sit-down televised interview on the Storm. I very much appreciate it. Best of luck in the November election, and you are welcome back anytime. And folks, remember, when you look around and you don't like what you see, don't complain about it. You could be the first Republican mayor in Wilkes-Barre and run for office like Frank's thinking of doing. You can do something about it. Thanks for watching.